into what my journey looked like becoming a licensed master social worker, what I'm doing currently, and the jobs that I was hired doing, and the skills I gathered and gained to get to where I am now. So let's get into it. So I went to a HBCU. I went to Savannah State for my bachelor's in social work, and I got that degree maybe in about 2013. And what made me decide to get into social work was it was out of three choices of what I was going to major in. And one of them was sociology, the next one was psychology, and lastly it was social work. And I got so much backlash from, oh, don't be a social worker, it's not gonna pay any money. And when I tell y'all, I am so grateful that I didn't listen to anyone, because I'm doing very well, and we're gonna get into that. Like, I make very well for how long I've been in the field, and just from my experience from then until now, how I've gained so much experience to really know and truly love what I do for work. So got my bachelor's in 2013, and if you're pursuing your bachelor's in undergrad, you know that one of the prerequisites to graduating, the part of the core curriculum, is to go into a field practicum program. And that's one thing that I love about pursuing a degree in social work, is that the core curriculum requires you to have an internship. And I'm not familiar with other majors and what they're required to do, but I saw and I noticed out of my friend group in college with what their degrees were, even though it was a little difficult because I could not work at all because my work was my internship that, of course, you don't get paid to do. So I noticed that going back and looking back on it, internship is so important. And we called it like a field practicum program. So your senior year, you are placed in a field practicum based on where you see yourself working out of undergrad. I don't think I really had a choice, because our choices were very slim for some reason, but it aligned perfectly. It aligned so perfect. I was able to get a field practicum with the public defender's office in Savannah, Georgia, and I was interning under a forensic social worker. And so I think I had to get in undergrad maybe 400 hours, so 200 per the semester. So the first semester of my senior year, I did 200 along with my classes, and then the next semester it was 200, and it equaled up to 400. And basically with the public defender's office, I basically, well, the role of the social worker in that role, in that setting, is to meet with inmates in jail, women, men who are anticipated to discharge, and to help them have a successful discharge plan so that they don't end up back incarcerated. So that's basically the role. And I would observe my supervisor do some of those things, and I would have a chance to touch some of the cases. But there was a master's level student also in that field practicum placement with me, and because she had a little bit more experience and then we're working with inmates, I didn't necessarily touch a lot of the case files, but I definitely would go into court. I definitely would be supervised. I would do certain visits into the jail, maybe weekly, for those who wanted to apply to get a public defender for their upcoming court date, so on and so forth. So that was my experience, undergrad, field practicum. I graduated in about 2013, so when I started giving y'all numbers of pay and what I was making, it may look very, very low compared to now. We're in 2024 and inflation is going on and everything is just extremely, it's just way more expensive than it was just a few years ago, feels like, for me. So my first job out of college, I did end up moving back home. I moved back home with my mom, and I got hired as a care coordinator, and I worked for a program, a Medicaid waiver program by the name of the Community Care Services Program, and I think they changed the name to the Elderly Disabled Waiver Program. And so I would do home visits. My population was older disabled adults. I absolutely loved that role because it was so flexible. I'm from a really small town, it's South Georgia, and the places I would travel to would be like little smaller towns around where I was from. So I would be able to plan my day to do my home visits. I loved my population because the elderly population, they were just so glad that I would be there to sit with them, and I would conduct what we called care plans. So it was just to evaluate where their health was, if they needed any additional assistance. Most of them were enrolled in the program that allotted them so many hours to get home health. So we would make sure that they're still getting their home health hours. So aid was coming in, supporting them with daily tasks. And some of them will also get home delivered meals on a weekly basis if they have family members that just can't, cook for them on the regular, or the days that the aide is not in the home with them. Very fun first job, and I made about $30K at that time, and that was my first job out of undergrad. And when I think about it now, if you say you're making that amount now and trying to move and purchase things and save things, I could see how it would be difficult. But at that time, I was living with my mom. I wasn't necessarily saving, but I did know in the back of my mind that I eventually wanted to transition out of my hometown for good. So keep that in mind. So got internship, my first role, about 32K. I'm sorry, I wrote down 32, so not 30, so 32. So after that, I ended up going through a season where I was really applying heavily to get out of my hometown. So my main cities that I was looking at was North Carolina, Florida, and Atlanta. Now I had family in Atlanta at the time, and I had a lot of friends, from college, so I was very familiar. I was actually born in Atlanta, but not raised here. So family's been here for a while, so it was kind of like a second home to me. So I just wanted to get away. So as I began to apply, I must say it was a little difficult. I think I had one interview in Charlotte, and it was for a psych social worker with a bachelor's, and I didn't get it, and I'm kind of glad looking back. Not only the role in itself as a new graduate with a bachelor's, but also being just further away from home, and I had to be 21 at the time, and I'm now, how old am I? I'm 28. I'm gonna be 29 this year, and we're in 2024. So I got the job eventually in long-term care placement in Buckhead, and the role consisted of me monitoring residents on the floor. So most of the population, again, was elderly and disabled. So you can see how that was a smooth transition because I had just worked with that same population. The only difference in the role was that now I'm seeing them on a daily basis, because most of our clients or patients that will come into long-term care had been discharged from the hospital due to a stroke or due to some type of illness or surgery. And so I would process their discharges, and you would have some that were in there for a long term, that had been in there for years. And so if they need to schedule outside appointments, if they just need anything additionally, clothing, assistance with, like I said, just outside appointments, equipment, so on and so forth. All right, at that role, I made about 34K. So now you can see I went from 0 at the internship, 32 first job out of bachelor's, third job, 34K. Each of these roles I probably stayed in for a year. And I know some people will say, well, why are you just hopping around? I must say, I know everyone's journey is not the same, but for me, I would change nothing about the time frame I stayed in each role, because a year gave me so much to learn and gain skills so I could build myself up in different areas so that I can get to where I am now, basically, and I'll get to that. So after long-term care, I went to CPS. All social workers know about Child Protective Services. I'm not gonna lie, it has a really bad stereotype, and I understand why, because of the burnout, because of the difficult cases that you come across. But I must say, almost every job that I've had, I've been blessed to have a good supervisor. Not all of them, but specifically I can recall my supervisor with Child Protective Services was very good at her job. Like, she worked very well with us as a team, and just understanding, like, when we would have stressors or burnouts, we could always call her if, you know, we need to make a critical decision for the life of a child. She was always made herself available to talk to us. She didn't just leave us out, you know, to dry. So I did that role for 2 years. I didn't do investigations, and I didn't do foster care. I did what is called family preservation, and family preservation is the middleman. So that means the family or the child's parents have had a case that has come in, and the case was substantiated, meaning that a safety concern had been found, whether it was drugs or neglect or anything that puts the child's safety at risk, missing excessive school. And the role of the family preservation social worker is to try hard to work with the family so that the children do not end up going into foster care. So by the time they would get to me, I would enroll them in courses like parenting classes, substance abuse counseling, and we would meet with the kids monthly, if not more, just to see if there's been a change in the safety concern. And if there's not, there's been some instances where I did eventually have to, you know, testify in court, and the children would end up going into care. But my goal was to always, if the safety concern, because, you know, some people just really struggle with, you know, if they're battling an addiction, and the time that we have the case sometimes cannot exceed a year. So a decision has to be made by the department on what we need to do with the kids and with the family. So I would do my best to give the families a heads up and let them know, like, hey, you know, there's a possibility that your case will transition into foster care, but let's do this. Let's see if there's some family members, you know, that could take on the role as a guardian until you get yourself where you need to be, because we would have to refer them out to get drug screens. I had to read drug screen panels, so on and so forth. So CPS, I would say, is one of those roles, if you can get through it, you can do anything in social work, because it's one of the most challenging roles because of the workload plus the cases and the families that you're working with on a daily basis. And in that role, I was a social services specialist 3. So because I had experience years prior, before going into CPS, they were able to put me at a social service specialist 2. Now, I knew with CPS that it was a burnout role, and I was thinking ahead. I knew that I did not want to retire in that role. So what I did was, and this was around COVID time too, I made a decision to go ahead and go back and start on my master's. So I was able to get my master's within a year because I'd already had my BSW. So I went into what we know as an advanced standing program, where all of your prerequisite courses will transition over to make it a shorter time for you to be enrolled in your master's. So I was doing CPS in the master's program, and I would say that was the second year. So second year at DFACS, I was doing my master's program and getting intern hours at a nonprofit, because you still have to have internship hours with your master's. Don't ask me how I did it, but I somehow, some way, by the grace of God, I was able to. It really taught me time management, and I was single at the time. I wasn't married yet, no children, and I just really allotted my time out to do my schoolwork. There would be times I can remember on holidays I would be doing schoolwork. So it's a commitment, and I knew it was what I wanted to do and what I needed to do. So I just made the decision to get it done. And if I didn't say already, I made about $42K as a social services specialist 3 in the role of a family preservation case manager. All right, coming up, we have, I left CPS because I dealt with a really, really difficult case that really broke my heart, and it pushed me out of the door of DFACS once I went through an experience with that case, because I had become very close with the family, and just due to confidentiality, I won't get into details about it, but I believe God used that situation to kind of move me out of CPS even faster. So it was a family I had grown very close to, of course, still professional, but when you're working with these families over time and you know, someone passes away due to, you know, an addiction or due to suicide, it can take a toll on you. So I just in that time had to pull the plug and say, you know what, I'm still in school, whatever, I can pull out at that time. So honestly, it ended up working out, because when I experienced that case and it broke me the way it did, I think I was graduating from my master's within that same time frame. It's crazy how God allowed it to work out all together. So I ended up going back into a role that I did when I first got out of undergrad, the one I told y'all about. I did the home visits with the elderly, the CCSP, a care coordinator. I went back to that role in Atlanta, but it was a role in Atlanta, but this time I went in as a team lead because I worked the job before. So I supervised like just a small team, and there weren't home visits because COVID was still going on. So this is when it was a plethora of work from home jobs. And so I was definitely glad that I applied. I got it. Everything worked out. And so I did that job again for about a year, because now I was studying for my licensure. So at this time, I'm a team lead. I have my master's, my newly master's, and I'm about to start studying for the LMSW. Now, I'm not the best test taker, so I knew that I was going to have to either find a good study partner, to take a long time to study, but I kept hearing the advice of don't overstudy and try to get your licensure when you kind of freshly get your master's, so the knowledge is fresh. That was some of the best advice I ever got. So I began studying for that, and I ended up investing in the TDC, the Therapist Development Center. It's expensive, y'all, but education and what you're doing in your career is a true investment. So I paid about $400 in there. Okay, I had to edit a little bit, so I'm hoping I'm picking back off. where I left off. So I was talking about the TDC and how it was a pretty penny, but it was worth it, because the thing when you're getting ready to take your LMSW or your LCSW, you don't want to study the wrong information. So what I appreciated and what I saw with the reviews of the TDC were that there were a team of people who created the study guide that had a way of preparing you for what would be on the test. And I know testing was not my strong suit. I typically get a little test anxiety and it's difficult for me. So I invested in the TDC to prep me for what will actually be on the exam, and I passed. I didn't pass by a lot of points, but I passed on the first try, and that was my main goal, passing on the first try. And of course, being familiar with the information, which I definitely was with all the experiences I've had that I've shared with you all thus far. So my first job with my new master's and my new licensure was Emory Dialysis. So this had to be my least favorite role. I don't know if it has something to do with my supervisor or with the population. I was there for a hot second. I don't even think I made 6 months before my current job now gave me a call. So with Emory Dialysis, it involved having a caseload of all of your dialysis patients. I actually was the home dialysis social worker, so that means that a lot of my patients were receiving their dialysis at home, and so I wouldn't really see them at the actual clinic. And so I would just do quarterly MDS assessments with them, and of course if they needed anything, they could contact me as their social worker. And I made about $60K at Emory Dialysis with my licensure. So that was good. And so now I actually work with veterans. I'm not going to give too much detail just for confidentiality. I am a clinician, and I've been at the VA now for about a little over a year now. I get paid a pretty penny, way more than when I was making $60K. I'm gonna just leave it at that. It's exceedingly more. So for anyone that is discouraging you, trying to say, oh, social workers don't make this and make that, I'm pretty close to 6 figures, pretty close. So with that, I love what I do. I always have been that social worker that never really had a specific population that I wanted to work with, because I've always just loved everything about social work. So I've been able to find different things that I truly, genuinely love in it. And so that pretty much wraps up where my career has landed me. This has been from graduating with my bachelor's till now. It's been about 6 to 7 years. And so the biggest point I wanted to make was that being a social worker, if you're getting the right roles and you're gaining the skills, and of course you're adding to your resume, you are going to eventually land a high paying role if you keep going. And yeah, right now I'm in a pretty good place. I am getting hours towards my supervision, so my LCSW, and of course I can choose to stay with the VA, or I can choose to, you know, do private practice if I want to, or do a non-profit. I mean, the door just opens each time you get your supervision or either another degree. I don't necessarily see myself going back for a PhD or going back to school, but I'll never say never. Like I said, right now, all of the experience that I've gained has led me up to where I am now. And I want to share, I got my master's Walden University. So in the description box, I'll put the school program, and I may just add like a few details of anything I want to specifically highlight that may encourage you on your journey if you decide to pursue social work. So I'm so glad that I got to share this information with y'all, and I hope that it was insightful and encouraging to those that are looking to get into the field.